March 31st, 1904. Port Arthur is enveloped in morning fog. The battleship Petropavlovsk majestically cuts through the waves, returning to harbor after maneuvers. On the bridge is Vice Admiral Stepan Makarov, commander of the Pacific Squadron. He has commanded the fleet for only 36 days, but has already managed to breathe new life into it, to restore the sailors' faith in victory. Suddenly, a deafening explosion. The ship shudders. A Japanese mine rips through the battleship's hull. 2 minutes later, the pride of the Russian fleet disappears into the depths of the sea, taking the lives of 730 people, including Makarov himself and the artist Vasily Vereshchagin. News of the Admiral's death spreads like lightning throughout the empire. In Tokyo, they celebrate. We lost one ship, the Russians, an entire fleet. And this is no exaggeration. With Makarov's departure, the Russian squadron lost not just a commander, it lost its soul, its strategic vision, its will to win. In 1849, a boy was born into the family of naval officer Osip Makarov in the city of Nikolaev, a boy destined to change the face of the Russian fleet. Stepan came into the world in an atmosphere of naval traditions. His father served in the Black Sea Fleet, and the Makarov home was imbued with the salty sea spirit and tales of distant voyages. Stepan's childhood passed in modest circumstances. A naval officer's family could not boast of wealth, but an atmosphere of respect for knowledge and hard work reigned within it. When the boy turned 9, the family moved to Nikolaevsk on Amur, where his father was transferred for service. The harsh nature of the Far East, the boundless sea expanses, and the mighty Amur shaped a special character in young Stepan, resolute, resilient, and fearless of difficulties. Already in his early years, Makarov showed an astonishing thirst for knowledge. He could spend hours observing the work of shipwrights, asking endless questions about the principles of how mechanisms worked. Local sailors joked, "This boy knows more about ships than some navigators." In 1863, when Stepan turned 14, he entered the Nikolaev Naval Academy. Here, his outstanding abilities in exact sciences and engineering became apparent. Teachers noted his phenomenal memory and analytical mind. His classmates, however, valued something else in him: his ability to be a friend, his readiness to help, and his inexhaustible optimism. But the main quality of young Makarov was his insatiable thirst for knowledge. He didn't just study, he researched. When other cadets were content with textbooks, Stepan spent hours in the library, studying the latest scientific works on oceanography, physics, and mechanics. He was particularly interested in questions related to water movement, ocean currents, waves, tides. Makarov's first voyage took place while he was still studying. This was not just a training cruise. For Stepan, it was a true revelation. It was then that he realized that the sea was not just an element, but a complex organism living by its own laws, which could and should be studied. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878 was a turning point not only in Stepan Makarov's career, but also in the history of global naval art. It was here, on the waves of the Black Sea, that Lieutenant Makarov revolutionized naval armaments, forever changing perceptions of naval warfare. By the beginning of the conflict with the Ottoman Empire, the Russian fleet was significantly inferior to the Turkish one. Enemy battleships dominated the sea, and an unconventional solution was needed to change the balance of power. Makarov proposed a bold idea: to use small, fast steam launches armed with spar torpedoes. These miniature vessels, capable of speeds up to 8 knots, could stealthily approach enemy ships and deliver devastating blows. On the night of January 14, 1878, Makarov led an attack by 4 torpedo boats on the Turkish steamer Intibak, anchored in Batumi roadstead. In pitch darkness, under enemy fire, the boats approached the enemy vessel closely. A torpedo, mounted on a long spar, was brought under the hull of the Turkish ship. An explosion followed, and the Intibak went to the bottom. For the first time in the history of world wars, a torpedo boat sank a large warship. This operation was a true triumph for Makarov. For his displayed bravery and innovation, he was awarded the Order of St. George of the 4th class and promoted to captain lieutenant. But most importantly, he proved the effectiveness of a new type of weapon. Makarov was not limited to practical actions. He developed an entire theory of mine warfare, outlining it in his work On the Study of Mine Weapons. In this work, he not only described the technical aspects of mine application, but also proposed tactical methods, many of which are still used today. He was the first in the world to develop the concept of a mosquito fleet, many small maneuverable vessels capable of countering large enemy ships. This idea proved so fruitful that it was adopted by all naval powers and remains relevant in modern naval doctrines. It was Makarov who first formulated the principle that became a cornerstone in mine warfare. Attack unexpectedly, strike surely, and withdraw immediately. This approach revolutionized naval combat tactics, introducing elements of asymmetric warfare, where the weaker side can effectively counter a superior enemy. Stepan Makarov's passion for the sea was evident not only in military affairs. In 1871, the young officer began systematic observations of water temperature and density in various seas. What for others was merely an element, for Makarov became a subject of scientific research. He sought to unravel the laws by which the ocean lives. During long voyages, Makarov never missed an opportunity to conduct oceanographic measurements. He developed his own research methodology and designed special instruments and tools. He was particularly interested in ocean currents, these invisible rivers within the ocean that determine the climate of entire continents. Once, while measuring water temperature in the Bosphorus Strait, Makarov made an astonishing discovery. He found 2 opposing currents, an upper one from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean and a lower one in the opposite direction. This phenomenon, known today as Makarov's exchange, became fundamental to understanding the circulation of waters in the world ocean. The ocean is not just a mass of water, but a complex organism with its own circulatory system, Makarov wrote in his diaries. This idea was revolutionary for its time, when oceanography was just emerging as a science. In 1882, Makarov organized the first Russian oceanographic station on the Black Sea. Here, under his guidance, regular measurements of temperature, salinity, and water transparency were carried out. For the first time in Russia, sea observations became systematic, not random. Makarov didn't just collect data, he sought patterns within it. Analyzing thousands of measurements, he developed a theory of water exchange between the Black and Mediterranean sea basins, explained the causes of current formation, and predicted their seasonal changes. Remarkably, Makarov conducted his scientific work in parallel with his military service. By day, a ship commander; by night, a scientist over maps and tables. Fellow officers joked, "Our Stepan Osipovich is fighting both the Turks and the unknown at the same time." Makarov's first scientific publications generated interest not only in Russia, but also abroad. His methods of ocean research were recognized as exemplary, and his conclusions impeccably accurate. The Admiral in uniform became an authority in the scientific community. Stepan Osipovich Makarov, was not only a brilliant naval commander and scientist, but also an outstanding inventor. His engineering genius was particularly evident in the development of technologies ensuring the safety of ships in battle and during accidents. One of his most important achievements was his theory of ship unsinkability, a revolutionary concept that changed the approach to designing warships worldwide. In the 1880s, Makarov conducted a series of experiments to study the flooding of ship compartments. He was the first to propose dividing the ship's hull with watertight bulkheads and creating an effective pumping system, the Admiral asserted, decades ahead of his time. His pumping system allowed for controlling the spread of water through compartments and quickly removing it from damaged parts of the ship. Makarov personally supervised the testing of this system, sometimes risking his own life for scientific accuracy. The results of these experiments formed the basis of his fundamental work, Quote 1, which became a desktop reference for naval engineers worldwide. Another ingenious invention by Makarov was the emergency patch, a special device for plugging holes in a ship's hull. This patch was a strong tarpaulin, reinforced with ropes and equipped with a fastening system to the hull. In case of damage, it could be quickly placed under the hole, significantly reducing water ingress. The Makarov patch saved hundreds of ships and thousands of sailors' lives. But perhaps the Admiral's most famous technical achievement was the invention of a special tip for armor-piercing shells. Before Makarov, there was a serious problem. Steel shells often disintegrated upon impact with armor, causing no significant damage. The Admiral proposed equipping shells with special caps made of soft metal, which absorbed the initial impact, allowing the main body of the shell to maintain integrity and penetrate the armor. Makarov caps, as they came to be known, significantly increased the effectiveness of the Russian fleet's artillery. After testing in 1894, they were adopted for service, and soon this technology was adopted by all leading naval powers of the world. Surprisingly, Makarov never patented his inventions or profited commercially from them. "Everything for the fleet, everything for Russia," he would say, refusing personal enrichment. His technical innovations were the result of deep scientific analysis and practical experience in naval service, a rare combination that made the Admiral a unique figure of his time. In 1886, the corvette Vityaz, under the command of Captain First-Rank Stepan Makarov, embarked on a circumnavigation that was destined to become a turning point in the history of Russian oceanography. This voyage, lasting almost 3 years, transformed into a large-scale scientific expedition that reshaped our understanding of the world ocean. Makarov turned the warship into a floating laboratory. On board the Vityaz were installed the most modern instruments of the time for measuring depth, water temperature at different horizons, salinity, and other parameters. The ship's crew, infected by their commander's enthusiasm, enthusiastically participated in scientific research. Makarov paid particular attention to the Pacific Ocean, the largest and, at that time, least studied body of water on Earth. The expedition conducted detailed studies of its currents, mapped depths, and collected unique data on water temperature regimes. During the voyage, more than 900 deep water stations were completed, and thousands of water samples were taken from various depths. Makarov's scientific feat lay not only in data collection, but also in its meticulous analysis. Upon returning from the expedition, he immersed himself in processing the collected materials. The result of this titanic work was the 2-volume treatise Vityaz and the Pacific Ocean, published in 1894. This monograph caused a real sensation in the scientific world. In it, Makarov did not simply present dry facts. He formulated new patterns of oceanic water circulation, explained the mechanisms of current formation and their influence on climate. Of particular value were his observations of the interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere, an area that was just beginning to develop. Quote zero, Makarov wrote, anticipating modern ideas about the ocean's role in shaping Earth's climate. For his scientific work, Stepan Osipovich was awarded the highest award of the Russian Geographical Society, the Konstantinovskaya Medal, and the Paris Academy of Sciences awarded him the Admiral Butakov Prize. The name of the Russian admiral stood alongside the greatest ocean explorers, Maury, Carpenter, and Thompson. Makarov's uniqueness lay in combining the qualities of a naval officer and a scientist. His practical experience of maritime service allowed him to see problems inaccessible to armchair theorists, and his scientific methodology provided the tools to solve them. This synergy of military and scientific thinking made his research truly revolutionary. The Arctic, humanity's last unexplored frontier. In the late 19th century, these harsh ice fields remained unconquered, inaccessible to regular navigation. But Stepan Makarov did not recognize the word impossible. In 1897, he put forward a revolutionary idea: to create a special vessel for overcoming polar ice. Ice fields should not be a barrier for Russia, Makarov stated in his reports. He justified the necessity of building a powerful icebreaker capable not just of breaking through ice, but also of paving the way for other ships. The idea met resistance from conservative officials, but Makarov managed to convince Minister of Finance Sergei Witt and, more importantly, Emperor Nicholas II himself. The project was named Yermak, in honor of the conqueror of Siberia. Construction took place in England at the Armstrong shipyard under Makarov's personal supervision. The Admiral personally developed many technical solutions: a special hull shape, a system for reinforcing the bow, and special propellers. The Yermak became the world's first Arctic-class icebreaker, a true technological breakthrough of its time. On February 21, 1899, the Yermak arrived in Kronstadt, and already in March of the same year, Makarov embarked on its first Arctic expedition. The goal was to study ice conditions in the Svalbard region and test the ship's capabilities. During this voyage, Makarov conducted systematic observations of the structure and strength of ice. He developed a method for determining ice thickness by its color and texture, and created a classification of ice fields. The Admiral personally participated in measurements, often risking his life by venturing onto unstable ice floes. Ice is not a monolith, but a complex structure with its own laws of movement and transformation, Makarov wrote in his diary. His observations formed the basis of a new science, glaciology. The Yermak's second expedition in the summer of the same year became even more ambitious. Makarov planned to reach Franz Josef Land and possibly move further towards the North Pole. However, the harsh Arctic showed its character. The Yermak sustained damage in heavy ice and was forced to return. This did not discourage Makarov. He initiated the modernization of the icebreaker, strengthening its hull and altering the bow design. He summarized the collected data on ice in his work Yermak in the Ice, which became the first scientific study of ice navigation. Makarov's northern expeditions opened a new era in the exploration of the Arctic. He proved that regular navigation in northern latitudes is possible with the right technical approach. His methods of ice piloting are still used today, and the Yermak he created became the prototype for an entire generation of Arctic icebreakers. Stepan Makarov's military theoretical legacy is striking in its depth and foresight. In 1897, he published the fundamental work, Quote, which became a revolution in naval thought. This work, translated into many languages around the world, transformed the Russian admiral into a recognized authority of international stature. In his theoretical research, Makarov decisively broke with the outdated dogmas of linear tactics. He wrote, criticizing the defensive doctrine prevalent in the Russian fleet of that time. Makarov's central idea was the concept of active offensive operations. He argued that initiative in naval warfare is crucial. He who first detects the enemy and first prepares for battle will gain an invaluable advantage, the admiral noted, anticipating the principles of information superiority that became the basis of modern military doctrines. Surprisingly, even in the late 19th century, Makarov predicted the evolution of naval battles. He wrote about the significance of submarines and mine warfare when most military theorists considered them merely auxiliary means. He foresaw the increasing role of speed and maneuver, technical means of reconnaissance and communication. Future naval battles will be won not only by armor and gun caliber, but also by the speed of decision-making, by the commander's ability to think outside the box. These words of Makarov sound remarkably modern even in the 21st century. A special place in the admiral's theoretical works was occupied by questions of personnel combat training. He was convinced that technical progress is useless without adequate crew training. Makarov asserted. In the Russian fleet, Makarov's ideas met with a mixed reaction. Conservatively minded admirals considered his views too radical, and his demands for the intensity of combat training excessive. The Ministry of Marine, mired in bureaucracy, often ignored his proposals for fleet reform. Makarov's criticism of the promotion system, based not on professional qualities, but on length of service and connections, was particularly sharp. This phrase cost him many detractors in high circles. But history confirmed Makarov's rectitude. His theoretical propositions were confirmed by the experience of the Russo-Japanese War, the First and Second World Wars. Today, many principles formulated by the admiral are part of the naval doctrines of the world's leading powers. Stepan Osipovich Makarov's commanding talent manifested not only in his combat exploits and scientific discoveries, but also in his outstanding pedagogical abilities. Leading various fleet formations, he created a unique system for training naval officers and sailors that was decades ahead of its time. Upon taking command of a ship or squadron, Makarov first and foremost changed the very philosophy of training. Quote, zero. This principle underpinned his pedagogical system. The admiral personally participated in drills, demonstrating how a true sailor should act. Officers recalled how 60-year-old Makarov would outpace young lieutenants when climbing the shrouds or handling a longboat. He would repeat to his subordinates. Makarov developed a system of daily crew training that included not only practicing standard maneuvers, but also actions in emergency situations. Under his command, ships regularly conducted damage control drills, artillery firing in difficult weather conditions, and night maneuvering without lights. Revolutionary for its time was Makarov's principle of cultivating initiative. In an era when officers were only required to strictly follow instructions, the admiral encouraged independent thinking. An instruction indicates the best way to perform a task under normal conditions. But no instruction can foresee all circumstances, he would say, teaching officers to make decisions in non-standard situations. Makarov paid particular attention to the training of young officers. He created a mentorship system on ships, where experienced sailors passed on knowledge to newcomers. At the same time, the Admiral demanded that senior officers not just give orders, but also explain the reasons behind their decisions. "The fleet needs thinking officers, not mechanical executors," he asserted. Makarov's School of Naval Education was built on a combination of theory and practice. He organized libraries on ships with professional literature and encouraged self-education. Any theoretical knowledge was immediately tested in real conditions. Even on long voyages, Makarov arranged for officers to analyze tactical problems and past naval battles. The most important element of the Admiral's pedagogical system was the cultivation of a unified ship spirit. A ship is strong not only by its machines and weapons, but, above all, by the unity of its crew. This idea ran like a red thread through all his instructions. Makarov knew how to create a special atmosphere on ships where every sailor felt like part of a single organism. In the late 19th century, as the Russian Empire actively expanded its presence in the Far East, Admiral Makarov was one of the few who clearly saw the growing threat from Japan. While Petersburg officials considered the Japanese little monkeys in human clothes, incapable of resisting a great European power, Makarov looked deeper. In 1895, after Japan's victory in the war with China, Stepan Osipovich sent an extensive analytical memo to the Naval Ministry. "Japan is building a modern fleet with unprecedented speed," he wrote. "Their ships are built with the latest technology, and officers receive excellent education in the best naval schools of Europe. In 10 years, the Japanese fleet will become the dominant force in the Pacific Ocean." Makarov did not limit himself to general warnings. He meticulously analyzed the composition of the Japanese fleet, the quality of crew training, and the strategic plans of the Japanese command. The Admiral paid particular attention to the vulnerability of Russian Far Eastern possessions. Port Arthur and Vladivostok are insufficiently protected, he indicated in a memorandum from 1900. "Our squadron is divided between two bases, which will allow the enemy to defeat it piecemeal. It is urgent to strengthen coastal defenses, create a system of minefields, and prepare reserves of coal and ammunition." Anxiously observing the exacerbation of relations between Russia and Japan, Makarov proposed a specific plan of action. Concentrate a strong squadron in Port Arthur, mobilize reservists in the Far East, and strengthen intelligence work. But his warnings met with a wall of incomprehension and arrogance. Admiral Alexiev, the Emperor's viceroy in the Far East, dismissed Makarov's reports as overly alarmist. War Minister Kuropatkin believed that Japan would not dare to attack Russia. And in the highest circles of Petersburg, the conviction prevailed that Little Japan would never dare to challenge the Romanov Empire. In his last memorandum, written in November 1903, Makarov predicted the start of the war with prophetic accuracy. "Japan will launch a sudden strike against our fleet, aiming to destroy it before reinforcements arrive from the Baltic. The first target will be the squadron in Port Arthur." Less than 3 months later, on the night of January 27, 1904, Japanese destroyers attacked Russian ships in the outer roadstead of Port Arthur. The war, which Makarov had warned about, began exactly as he had predicted. On February 24, 1904, Stepan Osipovich Makarov was appointed commander of the Pacific Squadron. News of his arrival instantly transformed Port Arthur, which had been disheartened by the initial defeats. "Makarov is coming!" This phrase was passed from mouth to mouth, instilling hope in the hearts of the sailors and inhabitants of the besieged fortress. The Admiral arrived in Port Arthur on March 7th and immediately got to work. His first order was to remove valuable items and personal belongings of the crew from the ships. "We came here to fight," not to luxuriate, he declared to the officers. This symbolic gesture showed that the squadron was going to sea seriously and for a long time. Makarov radically changed the system of service organization. Instead of passive waiting in the harbor, the ships went out for exercises daily. "A true fleet is born only at sea," the admiral repeated, personally directing the maneuvers. He introduced round-the-clock destroyer duty at the harbor entrance, organized a system for observing the enemy, and established reconnaissance. Stunning changes occurred in the morale of the crews. Sailors and officers, still recently depressed by the sudden Japanese attack, were re-energized. "With Makarov, we won't be lost," they said on the ships. The admiral often went around the squadron, talked with the sailors, and delved into the smallest details of the service. Just a week after Makarov's arrival, the first combat engagement took place. Japanese cruisers, accustomed to approaching Port Arthur with impunity, were met with fire from Russian ships and hastily retreated. "Now they know that Port Arthur has a new master," the admiral noted with satisfaction. On March 10th, a destroyer battle took place at the harbor entrance. The Russian destroyer Steregushchi was surrounded by 4 Japanese ships. Makarov personally led the cruiser Novik to sea to save the crew. Although the Steregushchi was sunk, the Japanese were forced to retreat, and the moral victory remained with the Russian sailors. Gradually, the initiative at sea passed to the Russian squadron. Japanese Admiral Togo, who had previously dominated off the coast of the Liaodong Peninsula, was forced to withdraw his main forces. Makarov was preparing the squadron for a decisive battle, planning to send all combat-ready ships to sea. "Remember," he told the officers, "at sea, victory goes to those who are not afraid of bold decisions and believe in victory." In 36 days of command, Makarov managed to transform a demoralized squadron into a formidable fighting force, ready to repel the enemy. March 31st, 1904. Dawn over Port Arthur was foggy and unsettling. Admiral Makarov received a report of Japanese ships appearing at the entrance to the harbor. Without a moment's delay, he decided to sail out to meet the enemy on the flagship battleship, "Zero." With him on board was the famous artist Vasily Vereshchagin, who had arrived at the fortress to capture the heroic defense of the Russian sailors. The squadron put to sea around 8 in the morning. In addition to the "1", the battleships "2", "3", and the cruiser "4" participated in the operation. Seeing the Russian ships, the Japanese cruisers began to retreat, a typical tactic of Admiral Togo, who sought to lure Makarov under the fire of the main forces of the Japanese fleet. Stepan Osipovich discerned the enemy's plan and gave the order to return to the harbor. The squadron turned around and headed towards Port Arthur. Nothing foreshadowed the tragedy. On the bridge of the Petropavlovsk, the admiral was discussing the results of the morning maneuver with his officers. At 9:43, a deafening explosion rang out. The battleship shuddered as if it were a living creature. The Petropavlovsk had struck a Japanese mine, laid overnight by the mine layer Koryo Maru. The explosion caused the detonation of the artillery magazine. An enormous pillar of flame shot up from the ship. "Save the admiral!" someone among the officers shouted. But it was too late. The Petropavlovsk rapidly sank into the water, listing to starboard. It took only 2 minutes for the deep sea to swallow the pride of the Russian fleet. Of the 833 people on board, only 80 survived. Among the dead was Admiral Makarov. Eyewitnesses recounted seeing him on the bridge until the last second. He was giving orders, trying to save the ship and its people. The news of Makarov's death instantly spread throughout Port Arthur. People refused to believe what had happened. Quote 10 said, "Sailors, officers, and residents of the fortress. But the terrible truth was confirmed when the rescued sailors were brought ashore. In St. Petersburg, the mournful news arrived the next day. Emperor Nicholas II wrote in his diary, quote, 11. Requiem services were held throughout the empire for the deceased admiral. Newspapers came out with mourning borders. In Japan, the news of Makarov's death caused jubilation. Admiral Togo sent the famous telegram to Tokyo. The fleet of the gods of Japan clearly fights for us. Japanese newspapers wrote, Russia has lost its only sailor. Emperor Meiji personally congratulated Admiral Togo on a great victory without a battle. With Makarov's death, the Russian squadron was orphaned. Admiral Vityaz was appointed the new commander, an educated staff officer but not a combat commander. He returned to the passive tactics that Makarov had so decisively rejected. The ships again took shelter in the harbor, sorties to sea ceased, and the initiative fully passed to the Japanese. Quote 15 wrote one of Port Arthur's officers, "We lost the soul of the fleet, its will to victory." These words accurately reflected the scale of the catastrophe. Makarov's death became a turning point in the entire Russo-Japanese War, predetermining Russia's defeat at sea. The death of Admiral Makarov became a fatal turning point in the entire Russo-Japanese War. In the 36 days of his command, he managed to transform the Pacific Squadron, breathing new life and confidence into it. A comparison of the fleet's strategy before Makarov's arrival, during his command, and after his death reveals a dramatic difference in approaches. Before Makarov's appointment, the Russian fleet in Port Arthur adhered to passive defensive tactics. Ships rarely left the harbor, crews lost morale, and the Japanese dominated the sea. Admiral Stark, Makarov's predecessor, considered his main task to be the preservation of ships rather than active opposition to the enemy. Upon arriving in Port Arthur, Makarov completely changed the situation. His strategy was built on three pillars: constant combat readiness, active maneuvering, and initiative in combat operations. The squadron went to sea daily, conducted exercises, and trained artillery crews. The Admiral personally directed operations, being on the bridge of the flagship. After Makarov's death, Admiral Vityaz took command. An educated staff officer but not a combat commander. He returned to passive tactics, and the ships again took shelter in the harbor. The initiative completely passed to the Japanese, who established a tight blockade of Port Arthur. On August 10, 1904, a decisive battle took place in the Yellow Sea. Under pressure from Viceroy Alexiev, Admiral Vityaz led the squadron out to sea, attempting to break through to Vladivostok. The battle lasted all day, and the Russian ships fought honorably. However, a lucky shell hit the conning tower of the flagship Tsesarevich, killing Vityaz. The squadron, left without leadership, scattered. Some ships returned to Port Arthur, others went to neutral ports. The 2nd Pacific Squadron, under the command of Admiral Rozhestvensky, having completed an unprecedented voyage from the Baltic, was defeated in the Battle of Tsushima on May 14–15, 1905. Of the 38 ships of the squadron, 21 were sunk, 7 were captured by the Japanese, and 6 were interned in neutral ports. Only 3 ships reached Vladivostok. Could Makarov have changed the course of the war? Contemporaries and historians agree, yes. His plan consisted of actively opposing the Japanese fleet, exhausting it with constant sorties and torpedo boat attacks. He intended to preserve the squadron until reinforcements arrived from the Baltic, and then to give a general battle. At the same time, Makarov understood the importance of coastal defense and mine barrages, which he intended to use to protect the approaches to Port Arthur. If Makarov had survived, the squadron would not have been locked in the harbor, but would have continued active operations, tying up the forces of Admiral Togo. Port Arthur would probably not have fallen in December 1904, and the second squadron, arriving in the Far East, would have joined the first, creating a powerful fleet capable of resisting the Japanese. Admiral Makarov's scientific and technical legacy is striking in its scale and foresight. Many of his ideas, which seemed too bold to his contemporaries, only developed decades later, confirming the genius of this man who combined the talents of a naval commander and a scientist. The theory of ship unsinkability, developed by Makarov, revolutionized world shipbuilding in the 20th century. After the sinking of the quote in 1912, shipbuilders around the world turned to the works of the Russian Admiral. The principle of dividing the hull into watertight compartments, proposed by him back in the 80s of the 19th century, became mandatory for all passenger and warships. Makarov's plaster, for emergency patching of holes with modifications, is still used in the fleet, and his bilge system, improved by modern technologies, remains a vital element in the struggle for ship survivability. The Admiral's oceanographic research is of particular value. The data collected by him during the expedition on the quote 2 are still used by scientists in studying long-term climate changes in the Pacific Ocean. Makarov's method of measuring temperature and salinity at various depths has become a standard for oceanographic research. The phenomenon of double current in the Bosphorus Strait, discovered by Makarov, warm desalinated on the surface and cold saline in the depths, provided a key to understanding the mechanisms of water exchange between marine basins. Today, this concept helps scientists predict the spread of pollution in the world ocean and model climate change processes. Surprisingly, Makarov's research into Arctic ice has gained new relevance in the 21st century. In the era of global warming, his observations of the structure and movement of ice fields, made over 100 years ago, serve as invaluable material for comparison with the current state of the Arctic. The quote 3 for armor-piercing shells invented by the Admiral were used in all wars of the 20th century, greatly increasing the effectiveness of naval artillery. And his concept of a small, fast-moving strike ships found application in World War II and continues to influence modern naval strategy. But perhaps Makarov's most important legacy was his holistic thinking, a rare ability to see the interconnectedness between different fields of knowledge. He did not just study individual phenomena, but sought to understand their place in the overall system. This approach is now called systems thinking, and is considered an essential quality of a modern scientist. The name of Stepan Osipovich Makarov is inscribed in golden letters in the history of Russia and world science. He became the embodiment of a unique blend of military genius and scientific talent, a combination rarely encountered in world history. Makarov belongs to that constellation of great people who are ahead of their time, paving the way to the future. The Admiral's memory is immortalized throughout the world. Cities and streets, ships and seamounts, scientific institutes and educational institutions are named after him. In Kronstadt, the city of Russian naval glory, a majestic monument to Makarov stands tall. The bronze admiral, standing firmly on his pedestal, seems to gaze into the maritime distance, ready to lead ships into battle once more. On the world map, one can find the Makarov Strait in the Sea of Japan, the Makarov Seamount in the Pacific Ocean, and Cape Makarov in Antarctica. The Russian fleet carefully preserves the memory of the great admiral. Combat ships of various generations have borne and continue to bear his name. Makarov's scientific legacy continues to live on in the work of the State Oceanographic Institute, numerous Arctic expeditions, and systems for ensuring navigation safety. His works on oceanography and the theory of ship unsinkability are still studied in naval educational institutions worldwide. But perhaps Makarov's main legacy is his intellectual example. In an era of narrow specialization, he proved the value of broad, comprehensive thinking. The Admiral scientist showed that military affairs and science do not contradict but complement each other, and that true progress is possible only at the intersection of different fields of knowledge. Modern Russia, striving to restore its status as a maritime power, could draw much from Makarov's intellectual legacy. His approach to fleet development, based on scientific research and technical innovation, is relevant today. Makarov's principles, boldness in setting tasks, scientific validity of decisions, attention to personnel training, could form the basis of a modern maritime doctrine. Of particular value is Makarov's approach to the development of the Arctic. In an era when the northern territories are becoming an arena of geopolitical rivalry, his ideas about the comprehensive study and development of polar regions take on new meaning. The modern northern sea route is, in many ways, the embodiment of the Admiral's dream of transforming the Arctic into a transport artery of Russia. Makarov was not just an outstanding figure of his time. He created a school of thought, a tradition of an intellectual approach to solving the most complex problems. And today, as the world faces new challenges, his example inspires us to seek unconventional solutions based on deep scientific analysis and bold, practical action.